So Falcon and Winter Soldier decided to pull Trial of the Chicago 7 riff tonight, as this episode is quite literally entitled The Whole World is Watching. We're here to talk about episode 4 of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Myself, Chris the TV Nerd, we've got Yolo here from Unyolo Movie Blogs, we've got Joe here from Guy at the Movies. Chris, there was a lot to talk about in this episode.
Yeah, man. For the next hour and 15 minutes, guys, this is going to be the place to be, to chat all things Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The whole world is watching. Dom, shall we get into this?
John Walker is indeed being watched now. That's all I got to say. Roll that graphic. All right, what's going on, guys? Long time. Joe, we've had you on the channel recently. Everyone knows you. Yolo, long time since we've had you on the channel. What's going on?
How you doing?
I'm
good. Okay.
Happy to have you guys here. And, of course, we love you, Joe, even though you relentlessly mock me, I relentlessly mock you. It all works out for the better overall. We're happy to have you guys here on episode 4 of our Falcon and Winter Soldier 6-week recap. Already, this show is proven to be so different than WandaVision in so many different ways. And even though last week there was a lot that happened with the introduction of Madripoor, this week, again, kind of saw, we'll say, certain storylines come to a head, and some in not so pretty ways. Definitely some unexpected surprises last week that were kind of paid off in some interesting ways this week overall. But before I throw it to our guests, Chris, got any, I guess, different thoughts, I should say, before we get into it tonight?
You know, not too many different thoughts. I'm going to have to do a lot of sort of, making sure I cover my trail here when I speak tonight, because I have thoughts and I have feelings. But again, we're not binging this show. We're not watching it sort of in a quick sort of hyper sped up amount of time. So some of these complaints I have might get answered. So I'm going to be very careful with my words tonight, because I really am giving the show the benefit of the doubt and really enjoying it so far. So,
and again, as the title suggests, the whole world is watching. I'm going to be making that joke nonstop throughout. I think it honestly might just be the perfect title for this video overall. But so we got 2 guests here. So, Joe, we have not had you on yet for Falcon and Winter Soldier. We obviously had you on for WandaVision. So, real quick, what are your thoughts so far on Falcon and Winter Soldier and how it compares to WandaVision?
So, it's kind of interesting because I think that you can't look at them separately. I think you have to look at them as a whole. What I'm seeing with Falcon and Winter Soldier, as well as what we saw with WandaVision, is I do think that they are playing in a certain level, right? They're not trying to go too far into what would impact the films, because my whole belief is that they want to deliver something that's entertaining, but not something that you have to watch in order to understand what's going to happen in the films. So Wanda, obviously we have some developments there with her character. You understand where Vision went. We have Monica Rambeau that entered the picture. But so far, if you were to pick up with the characters in Falcon and Winter Soldier, you wouldn't miss much. However, I do think that this is the episode that really changed this series for me. I was a little underwhelmed for quite a bit, but I love the characters. I love the actors. This episode really changed that, because I think they did a great job with the John Walker character. I do think they did a great job in pushing forward the Flag Smashers and Carly a lot more. And it opens up what we're going to see in the future. So I'm hopeful, but I'm one of those people that jumps into a bunch of different theories. I have so many theories about what I would like to see, but I have theories about what I want to see and theories about what I know is going to happen. They're not going to happen. It's going to be a straight edge show. We're going to develop these characters and see what happens from there. So in that sense, it's good. It's a little underwhelming, but I'm enjoying especially this episode.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say WandaVision, I feel kind of spoiled all of our, theory making, because we so heavily theorized about that show, and then at the end, all we got was a bad boner joke overall. YOLO. So this is the first kind of Marvel, big budget, kind of studio Disney-led thing that we've really had you on so far for the year, because you did not get a chance to be on any of our WandaVision recaps, and here we are, 4 episodes into Falcon and Winter Soldier. So as we kind of ask every person that we've had, that we collaborated with, that we met last year, that we're kind of getting into this new year with, what are your thoughts overall, because kind of on this whole Disney Plus experiment? This is kind of our 3rd major thing now after The Mandalorian and WandaVision. Just kind of walk us through your thoughts on that.
Well, I just think they're playing on a completely different level from everyone. Like these shows are just, and I just have to disagree a tiny bit with Joe because no, I'm not gonna start.
Really?
No, I'm not gonna start with that. No, but the only
We
thing.
haven't even gotten to the recap yet. Come on,
No.
guys, save it for the positives and negatives.
I'm
at
just
least.
kidding.
No,
That's kind of
like-
an inside joke in a sense.
Yeah, it's an inside joke. But the thing is, what I have to disagree is that we have no idea what these shows are doing, because what we've seen on the MCU is this might be setting something up that's going to happen in 5-6 years. We don't know, and that's the cool thing about it. We don't know what WandaVision like set up. We know it's going to be like Doctor Strange. But the thing is, like, if you're a comic book reader, there's a lot of things here that he's going to set up. And we still don't know who the power broker is. So he could be like the Red Skull for all we know. That's the thing. Like, there's no idea how big this show might be setting up. And I think one thing that the MCU does really, really well is play with your expectations. So everyone was making theories about WandaVision, and they completely removed them off the board. And now there's not a lot of people making them. And I think we're going to have maybe a bigger surprise in the end of this show that we got on the WandaVision, because people are just not expecting it. And I think that's the game they're playing. They're always keeping us on our toes. And I think they're going to make like something, this show that no one is expecting that's going to have a lot of relevance. Whoa, I'm going to blow your mind. And I still hoping for that in the end of this show. There's only 2 episodes to go, but I think they can do that, and I expect that from them.
Yeah, that is true, because, I mean, unlike WandaVision, right, which was 9 episodes, it aired its first 2 episodes at once, but, like, we kind of had, like, this kind of multi-month odyssey to almost kind of evolve with the show, and it also kind of helped that there was essentially no competition. Falcon and Winter Soldier is obviously a little bit of a different beast where, like you said, we only have 2 episodes left, and the show started in the midst of, like, the Snyder Cut craziness, and then obviously kind of the Godzilla versus Kong craziness came and went, and we're starting to see the after effects of that. But like the show kind of came in the middle of like this massive pop culture burst, in a sense of where like after a year where we were just so craving that. And so the only question really that I have left before we dive into the episode is, are we ever going to get to that point where Marvel just isn't running the gamut of conversation as far as just being the epicenter of pop culture in which everything revolves around? Are we going to see that point in our lifetimes, or no? We're all going to be like, no offense, not trying to crack any ages joke, but we're all going to be like YOLO's age by the time something actually finally comes around and replaces Marvel as
27? 27?
All right, fine. Okay, fine. Be that guy. You guys know what
No,
I
I
mean.
can answer that. The answer is yes, 110% yes. I mean, just look at like the trends of last decade and the 90s. I mean, it's going to happen at some point, but I think at this Marvel's, I think one of the rare instances where they'll always be around, kind of like the WWE. I just think that their heyday and their intense super domination of the pop culture might not be as strong as it is now ever again. Kind of like when WWE had like The Rock and Stone Cold in the 90s, and they kind of had a little comeback with Cena and Batista in like the early 2000s, but it was still never the same as the 90s. But like they're going to be around. They've established themselves as players. So that's just my take on it. What do you guys think?
I do think. Oh, sorry.
No, you go, Joe.
Okay. I do think we're in for a letdown. And the only reason I say that is because we are substituting characters that everyone has known with Marvel. When you're talking about Chris Evans, you're talking about, Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark, all that. We're about to get into the revisionist Marvel realm and get into new characters and stuff. So, of course, there's going to be the comparison to what was before versus what is coming up now. And I think that's always, I say letdown, but it's always a difference. And that's where things are going to change a little bit. And that's where other comic, if you're talking about DC or whatever, it has an opportunity to kind of jump in and finally start fucking doing something right. I don't know if they'll ever do that, but
we can hope, but I think we all can know as far as this goes.
It won't happen. It won't happen.
If you guys haven't read that article on Deadline, kind of with the interview with Chris Terrio, as far as his impact on that, like,
Right.
I recommend
Right.
that.
I saw that came up. I didn't get a chance to hit it yet, but I
Dude,
plan on it.
Treat yourself if you get a chance. It's certainly interesting to say the least.
it is a very
Revealing, let's say.
revealing take on on studio interference with stories and then blaming the storytellers for those issues.
Like, Joe, just that not to segue too quickly, but that moment where they're like in front of like the freaking Wall Street guys, I was like, oh wow, like it went that high. Like,
I mean, you wonder why they have issues, but my whole point with Marvel is I think that I think they're starting to broaden out, right? So what we're seeing now is something different. And people that are paying attention to what Marvel is doing and seeing that they're trying to build the story through the Disney Plus series, as well as the different takes they're going to have in films coming up that are not the same like Iron Man 3, 4, 5, whatever you're going to do. Of course, we're continuing with Thor. We have a different Captain America in play right now. Who knows where that will end up at the end of the series? I'm sure we'll talk about that. But we're in that area where Marvel is transforming. So it's going to lose a little steam because people are not going to be on board with what's happening. But that doesn't mean it's not good storytelling.
The one thing I will say that really helps them out is the fact that, you know, they were one of the major things to happen during this pandemic. So they probably, if this was normal times, I think would have lost more steam, Joe, because we would have been going out, living our lives. We wouldn't have been locked down, and WandaVision probably wouldn't have made a splash, start of phase 4. But I mean, they really got lucky. What else happened in January, you know?
But can I ask you, like, not to be a dick about it, what happened with Marvel outside of WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier? And WandaVision ultimately let people down in some ways because we all like got into our crazy ways of like, oh, Mephisto's coming and this is going to lead into the X-Men and all that. Exactly right.
But this is the conversation all the time. We say, 100%. We say, oh, Marvel, they let us down. Oh, but the Winter Soldier is starting. I can't miss an episode. That's the thing. They don't give a shit if they let you down because they know they got you. Yep. That's exactly the point. And that's why I think Marvel is going to be around. Look, we've been saying this about Marvel for a long, long time. Like I said, if you read about the comic books, they were broke. They didn't even have money to stay alive. They had to sold Spider-Man for 2 cents. And the thing is, they always find a way back. And what like we love as readers, it's always to see new characters. And we have to be honest about that. Oh, we love Captain America. We love this. But every time there's a new character coming down, there's a reveal of a character. That's the part we all like excited. We all want to see the new X-Men. We all want to see the new like. So I think what they're smart enough is to understand that people say, oh, we're tired about superhero movies. But this is not a superhero movie. This is not a superhero show. This is like you were making fun before saying, oh, today was like the trial of the Chicago 7. And it was. That's the thing. They create shows so different like every single time that you never feel like tired about it because there's always something new there. And I think if they continue with that and they continue on being smart of using like this, look, no one gave a shit about Wanda before WandaVision. Everyone was like, oh, why she's in the Avengers? Well, what does she do alone?
What's with that accent?
Like, what's the accent? And why is she wiggling her hands about? And now everyone, Wanda is one of the favorite characters of a lot of people. Like if you talk, and this is what they're being smart. I'm sorry, but who gave a shit about Bucky and the Winter Soldier? Like, and now today on that episode when he's like in Wakanda and he's like, because that's the other thing. They have really, really good actors. That's the other thing we need to remember. They have really good actors. So they're being smart. They're picking up the smaller ones. They growing them, and maybe now people will be interested in watching a Wanda movie or a Falcon movie or whatever that no one was even interested before. And I think that's their game plan. And they like, look, Disney's been around for a long time, and people say it's a kid's studio, and people will get tired of it, and is like in our lives for like forever. So,
yeah.
My only pushback on that though, Yolo, is that they build this series as a 6-hour movie. Kevin Feige said that. He said it's a 6-hour movie.
I completely agree.
We're supposed to treat it that way. And I would argue, we'll get into this, I'm sure. I think until tonight, it didn't feel like a Marvel movie. It felt like a setup for 3 episodes, in my opinion. We'll get into that again. But
if you shrink it down, so it's a 6-hour movie. Usually it's a 2-hour movie. So if you shrink it down, We are like getting into the second act, and that's where things get interesting in a movie. So I completely agree. I think what annoys me, and like they were saying before, I have some issues with it, but I'll wait until the end to talk about it. And I think that's the way to do it. Or you wait and watch the 6 episodes in one go. But you can't be complaining on the first episode of something that you have no idea what's going to happen still. And you say, oh, there's a plot hole there. It's not a plot hole because no one talked about it yet. And that's the thing. Like, people really, it's like with WandaVision. Oh, the first 2 episodes are really boring. I'm not liking this. Yeah, so wait, like, if you don't have the patience, wait until the end, watch it all in a row, or just watch it every week and be patient.
Listen,
that's the issue.
I know that Chris and Dom have a direction we want to go. Can I throw this in a different direction for a second?
I'm loving this, man. Go for it.
Go
for it. It's Friday night.
Obvious? I gotta say, are the words scrolling down my face?
Well, no, you're good producers. You're going to do this. But here's my point. I had this conversation when I see movies that are set to be part of series.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to bring up is the worst to bring up right now, but Star Wars. When you're talking about Star Wars, not considering all the shit that we know as cinephiles that happen in the background, right? But when you're talking about the most recent 3 films of Star Wars, when I saw Last Jedi, my reaction after that to my best friend was, I want to see how they end it. It's a trilogy. We know this. I want to see how they end it. That's kind of what you're saying with this series, in that, like, it's 6 episodes. You know the stretch or the range that they're going for. Do you see a comparison there, or am I off base with that?
Yeah, with some of them, yeah. With Star Wars, no, because they had no shit of an idea what they were gonna do. So
I said without that.
Yeah, like so
now we can say that. But
to say anything else, I feel like these two just like summed up all of our points with this episode.
Boot yourselves out. Get out.
Yes. The thing is, like with Avatar, that they're filming like 17 at the same time. They probably have an idea.
Ever coming out? Let's be honest here.
No.
Are we ever actually getting?
Yes, we're gonna see.
I just heard they actually got pushed back to 2026.
We're gonna see the first. We're gonna see the first is gonna be shit, and then all get can. But the thing is, if they like doing like, let's say, Lord of the Rings, that they filmed it all in one go, yes, I completely agree with you. With Star Wars, that they're doing one and then they're waiting like to see people's reaction. That's the problem there.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
With all that being said,
I agree with your sentiment, Joe.
How we're gonna springboard off that, I have no idea. But with that being said, getting into the recap of episode 4, The Whole World is Watching, directed once again by Kerry Scogland, written once again by our boy Chris, Derek Kolstad. So the episode picks up right after the last one with Bucky's meeting with Io, the Dora Milaje member, who gives him 8 hours to use Zemo before the Wakandans take him. Zemo helps them find Carly Morgenthau, their arch nemesis, at a funeral for her adopted mother, Danya Madani. Where Sam attempts to talk to her before Walker and Hoskins intervenes. Overall, Sam attempts to reason with Carly, have that mano a mano, working man to working man, person who got screwed over by the man, back and forth, but ultimately Walker ends up intervening and a fight ensues. Zemo is successfully able to destroy most of the serum after shooting Carly. But however, Walker ends up taking the last vial in a very what was the guy's name from the first Captain America movie whose name is currently being lost on me. I know it was played by Richard Armitage. However, Zemo ends up escaping in a fight after the Dora Milaje intervene after they attempt to take him back. Morgenthau then calls Sam's sister, and forces him to meet with her as she attempts to persuade him to join her. However, Walker and Hoskins engage other members of the Flag Smashers, which leads to another fight in which Carly actually kills Hoskins. And filled with rage after having taken the serum, Walker kills one of the Flag Smashers with the shield in front of a whole group of people with smartphones, hence the title, The Whole World is Watching, showing the demonstration of, is this new Captain America really worthy of that prize shield overall that everyone was talking about? The answer to that, Joe, is, how do you know I'm not? I've been told that I resemble Michael Keaton, so I just... So with that being said, people, so now, after that quick recap, what did you guys think of this episode specifically? We talked a lot about our overall general thoughts of Marvel and everything going into it, and kind of Disney's relation and kind of the relation with each different like kind of subsequent franchise. So now, what were our thoughts and kind of what we liked and disliked about this individual episode? And I'm actually going to start with Chris.
Sure, yeah. So I thought that this episode was kind of what I've been looking for and hoping for from like the phase 4 of the MCU, just tackling issues from a more mature standpoint. It feels more grounded. It feels more rooted in reality, right? These characters, I feel they're tangible, you know, they're not larger than life. Like even this new Captain America, even after taking the super soldier serum, he's so human, he's so flawed that he doesn't feel like a larger than life hero. It's not like running into a celebrity on the street. It's like, oh, okay, there's someone who's serving our country. It's like seeing someone in the, like, I would imagine it would be like this new Captain America is like just seeing someone in service on the street. They're not a celebrity. They're just doing a job. And I really like that about this show. I think it fits like the spy espionage sort of route that we're taking, because I think one of the hardest things for me, and I think one of the things I've learned studying so many action movies lately and superhero movies and all that, is why I think if we're talking specifically superhero, I think I'm more of a DC fan, even knowing all of their flaws and agreeing with some of the criticisms they get, because again, like Ben Affleck's Batman, say what you will about him, he feels like a human being, you know, he's just trying to do what he can to save that universe. Whereas I don't know, sometimes when Iron Man can make anything happen with the snap of a finger, it's a little hard to believe. And so I really like where we're going with these characters. And so I thought this episode did a lot of bold stuff, man, especially with the John Walker thing. And we'll get into all that. But like that end sequence there when he just is smashing that guy's head or chest in with that shield and that imagery. I mean, listen, have your beliefs if you want, but I thought that was like amazing filmmaking, because I haven't seen anyone who's been neutral about that. Whether you're for that message or you're against that message, like they did what you want to do as a filmmaker, right? They got people to be emotive and responsive to it in a way that wasn't forced or sort of by just inserting some stupid joke. Like it was true filmmaking in my opinion. And I was really impressed overall. I have some negatives, but we'll get there. I don't want to speak too much. I want other people to go before I take all the points away. But yeah, overall, like solid episode, I have to say.
At the risk of being too preemptive, I will say that I personally think that the John Walker character is the best thing that has happened to the MCU in a long, long time. I think that, again, just the idea of what they were going for as far as Sam's decision to put the shield in the museum, and then with what they do with, you know, kind of them grafting it to John Walker. And Chris, I think you nailed it as far as being like the whole transition of the shield from Steve Rogers to John Walker is the fact that for Steve, yeah, it was a job, but at the same time, he was a celebrity in the sense. He was always kind of using it as kind of using kind of the burly, stern facade as, you know, a means of showing that like he was just somebody who was lost and somebody who really kind of wanted to just be normal, you know. And that's why whenever you kind of talk to him, he always had this like kind of physique and veneer of someone that you could look up to, right? Versus John is somebody who is so insecure and somebody who is trying so hard to live up to that legacy, almost to a fault, in a sense of where he almost can't get out of his own way.
Not almost to a fault, totally to a fault.
To a fault. You're right.
You got it. You're totally on.
Literally to the point where he literally can't get out of his own way. It's so funny because the MCU has done such a good job of, you know, how these characters have interacted with, you know, characters like the Dora Milaje and everything, and then you get John Walker, who's just, you know, acting like comes off like a buffoon talking to them overall, and then it leads to that moment at the end with that visual symbol of him holding the shield that way with the bloodstain on it. I'm like, holy shit, did Marvel actually just do like a visual metaphor? Like, I didn't know they actually could do that. You know, like we've criticized, you know, kind of, I'm not going to say how paper thin, but how kind of, we'll say surface level a lot of their storytelling has been. And for them to pull something off like that, you know, it's a good continuation for me of what they did with the Isaiah Bradley moment in the second episode. It was like, I'm like, yeah, we're finally going into a lot of those like kind of moral gray areas that we've kind of been wanting from Marvel for so long, you know, that they've really kind of only hinted at before.
Yeah, YOLO, man. What was your sort of initial, I guess, positives everyone's sort of given on this week's episode?
So yeah, like I said before, I think the big difference here is now they're playing in their own own ground. So they can do whatever they want. They're on Disney Plus. They don't need to worry if people are going to pay for a ticket because people already paid for subscription. So I think they are now completely at home, and they can do. And this is the first time when the Winter Soldier started, there was a couple of things that were like when it was the Falcon thing of not having money and stuff, and I thought, okay, you want to talk about that, but that's just stupid. He's an Avenger. But this time now, I think they also, like, before we were talking about luck, and I think they really got lucky, because this is really relevant now. Everything we saw in this episode today, and how people see themselves, and like that conversation of like being a terrorist or not. We never a terrorist in our eyes. We always think we're doing the right thing. And I think that's really relevant at the moment. And I think that's the big difference now. Marvel is not afraid on like getting people pissed off or against them, because they already have like 90% of the world on their side, and the other 10 still watch it just to complain that they shit. So they have everyone. So what I loved about this episode was just how they didn't hold any punches. That's like a couple of years ago, that shot with the shield with the blood, that would not be on a Disney show. That's the conversations we keep having. Oh, Deadpool, is he going to be there? Oh, we're going to... This shows that they're not like gonna make it kid friendly. If you're watching this, they're gonna talk about racism. They're gonna talk about like police brutality in a way that's what they did. They're gonna talk about whatever they want, and they feel it's important. And I think that's the big thing of this show, that it was supposed to come before WandaVision, and a lot of people was saying, oh, maybe if he came out, it wouldn't be compared. But I think now it completely shows that every show that's coming, it's going to be completely different. It's not going to be the same. And what I really loved on this one was that, and I completely agree with you guys, like we all like flawed characters. And that's why this is called the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and we're talking about Zemo, we're talking about like Walker, because this is like Shannon Carter, that I also think there's a lot more going on there. So this is I think it's gonna be, maybe the phase 4 is going to be more about the villains. It's going to be more about the flawed people. What they did with Thanos, and did a movie all about him in like Infinity War. I think we might get a lot more focus on these guys and setting all these guys up, because like you guys said before, like we're not going to do Captain America again. We're not going to do Iron Man. So we're going to need characters that are different. And I think this is what they're doing, and it's really, really cool.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Joe, your take on that?
So, Yellow, you and I get into good arguments about these movies and stuff like that. I agree with everything you said. The only place that I'm going to draw a distinction is that I think Marvel is in a good place to do this stuff that they're doing on Disney+. They will never do it in a wide-released movie, because Disney is afraid of branching off into these areas, whether you're talking about diversity, LGBTQIA, anything that kind of challenges the norm. They're going to branch away from that. They've done it in the past. The one thing that I really love about what Falcon and Winter Soldier is doing is that they are focusing on Sam's experience and the Black culture experience. Today, like the whole thing, it was a minor part of the episode, but it was the part where they're talking about Danya, I think it was, and Sam branches into it and says like, yeah, my TT, and you see that Bucky responds, TT? Like, what the fuck is TT? And he just goes, oh, yeah, my aunt. That is a very minor 2 lines, 3 lines, but it explains a lot. And it gives an awareness. It gives a focus on part of the community that we don't see in a lot of these movies. And I love that. I thought that was such a great thing. This episode, I do absolutely love, because I think it was very much focused on John Walker and his development, going from the expectations of him as Captain America to him just like really fucking melting down at the end of it, to be quite honest. But there were so many good lines. And one of the best exchanges was between Lamar Hoskins and John Walker at one point, where they're talking about the super soldier serum. And I'm trying to remember like the exact line of it, but it essentially was where he said, oh, here it is. Hoskins said, like, power just makes a person more of themselves, right? Carly Morgenthau, Steve Rogers. So he's drawing the distinction right there between the two of them. And Walker said, and me. And then Hoskins says, you already have 3 medals of honor. You consistently make the right decisions in the heart of battle, da, 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 da. And Walker is questioning that. And he's saying, even in the heart of battle, those decisions, like, were they the right decisions? Should I have made those decisions? And you see Hoskins say, imagine how many lives we could have saved if we had the super soldier serum in us. And I think ultimately that's what pushes us to the end of what we get at this episode. And I have more than I want to say on that. And Chris and I set this up. We produced on the side here because I have something that I want to bring up in a minute. But I think ultimately what we're seeing here is that they're trying to draw a distinction between Captain America that we know and Captain America that we're getting in this series. Captain America as the person, Steve Rogers. Captain America as the symbol, John Walker. That's a very different distinction. And that's what Carly really plays into a lot, saying that, like, at one point, I think she talks about the mascot or whatever. Or is that, I'm sorry, that's Sarah actually that says that. Sarah says something like, my world doesn't matter to America, so why should I care about a mascot?
Right.
And I think what they're doing here is really focusing in on the different experiences that people, even in the Marvel universe, when you have all these superheroes, all these people that can do so much good, who are they doing the good for? And that's so cathartic in the sense that, like, we're dealing with that in this world right now.
It's honestly kind of insane because I just think back to Erskine. Again, one of the best and most underrated characters that the MCU has ever produced, and his words and why he essentially chose Steve to be, like, the forebearer of him is because of this idea that Steve represented not somebody who wanted power, because he'd never known it, but somebody who just wanted to do the right thing, even though he had absolutely no reason to. Because, again, you saw him pre-Super Soldier Serum, he was a skinny shrimplet, But what's so fascinating about John Walker is essentially, even though he may have had the same mindset that Steve did when he inherited the super soldier form, when he inherited the shield and when he inherited the super soldier formula, as far as all he wanted to do was to do the right thing, at the end of the day, he was not someone like Steve Rogers, just based on, like, again, look at Wyatt Russell as opposed to, like, CG covered, Chris Evans, It's like, yeah, he's already a hunk of meat who had already, like...
He's a hunk of meat.
Yeah, to say the least. Well, he's Kurt Russell, Goldie Hawn's kid, so it makes sense. But, what's it called? But, like, oh my God, just lost my train of thought there. That's how distracting he is.
Well, I was gonna say,
but just one thing on what Joe said. The thing is, you said, "Oh, we're not gonna see this in the big screen. They taking chances here."
I'm not saying I don't. I'm hoping we do. But
the thing is, like, it's like everything else. They testing the waters. And if people react the right way, you're going to see more of this on the big screen.
But that's my problem, Yolo. You're talking about, when I'm talking about societal issues and identity issues, talking about reacting the right way is not the way I want to see them testing out, like, what they're doing with characters and stuff.
Yeah, but in the end of the day...
That's the stuff that needs to roll into the actual films, because that's what reality is.
Yeah, but in the end of the day, and this is the discussion I had with a lot of people about the Joker, in the end of the day... It's better to get the message to 1 billion people, like, not 1 billion people, you make $1 billion, but it's better to get the message out there in some way than to make a movie completely around the message and you don't get people to watch it. And I think that's the biggest problem.
Joker was a wide release movie versus a Disney Plus.
No, but what I mean is, if they test the waters and hide these messages, even if they hide it, I know what you mean. But the thing is, even if they find some way to put these messages in, and kids are watching and they're not even realizing, like today, kids watching the episode of today, they realize that someone in power that was working for a government, like, just killed someone that he didn't have the right to do it. So if you talk to a kid with that, like a new Captain America that took the power too far, and you talk about police brutality, probably the police brutality, the kids, if he's a young kid, is not going to understand it. But if he's Captain America, he kind of gets the... So I just think that sometimes we expect these huge companies to go full on and put the message right in the front of people's faces. But sometimes we need to realize if they do it their way, people are not ready to see it, and they don't see it in any way, and they push it away. And if you kind of sugarcoat it, people like, that's why I think The Joker is one of the most important movies that came out in a long time. Because if it was about mental health, if it was about that, people would not want to see it. He was, but that's the thing. But he hid it in a Joker-like name that everyone went to see it. And then when people were there, they were like, shit, where's Batman? Batman's not here. What the fuck is going on? And they saw a movie that was about mental health, and a lot of people saw it, and they started a lot of conversations and all that. So I think this is what Marvel is also doing. I think, like...
but real quick to bounce off that, and that's what's so interesting, right? Because Chris and I know have talked a lot about as far as messages and politics and like kind of the idea of, keeping politics out of movies, out of popular entertainment.
You can't do that.
But what's so fascinating about that, right, is the idea of I have always operated under the assumption that it doesn't matter whether it's a comic book movie or a serious drama, any movie, any work of art is gonna have a message in it in some capacity, right? And ultimately what it comes down to is ultimately the talent of the artist involved, right? How is it that said talented artist that is making said property with said studio that is producing it able to portray that message?
That's a very good point, Tom.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is because the problem, and so much of the time I personally feel like why so many people are turned off by the perceived message movies, like The Joker, I mean, my personal thoughts on that movie aside, is the fact of when you get somebody who is portraying a story about a character, right, that is ultimately going through those struggles that people are ultimately able to empathize with and relate to, as opposed to a blatant message movie that has no interest, that does not have an interesting story and characters to back it up, right? And that's what's so fascinating about these comic book stories, right? Because essentially, what is so fascinating about what they're doing with the comic book storytelling that we're seeing today is the fact that comic book storytelling has reached a standpoint where it really kind of doesn't matter. They don't really, not marketed is the wrong phrase, but they've gotten to a point now where if it's a comic book property, there's a pretty guaranteed shot that people are gonna watch it regardless. Even the niche properties like The Boys, like Watchmen, like even Invincible, an animated show on Amazon, are getting so much traction purely for the sake of the fact that they are superhero properties. And they're allowing these artists to kind of get these messages in that, again, something as recently as 10 years ago, they never would have been able to do because, again, they were pretty much, okay, it's these movies and they have to satisfy these quotas, right? And that kind of is still the same spot, right? But movies are also kind of in a weird spot, obviously, with the introduction of how television has evolved and how streaming has come into the game as far as everything goes. And that, to me, I feel like is where the distinction comes in, right? What separates something like a Rise of Skywalker versus something from, like, let's say, a Joker, right? Again, my personal thoughts and feelings on Joker aside, right? Just what that movie was trying to accomplish. The difference being is that the Joker, at the end of the day, was trying to tell a story about a character, right? And something like the Rise of Skywalker is just trying to, again, satisfy studio quotas and tide over audiences that were kind of tired from a lack of continuity and a really bad previous movie, and also with all of these forced messages that don't seem to really work out because they have absolutely nothing to do with the actual storyteller. They're just kind of thrown in there as like, oh, kind of look at how woke and progressive we are, That, to me, I feel like is where the distinction comes in. But because comic books have gotten to this point where they are literally the apex of cinematic storytelling right now, people can literally come in and basically do whatever they want on it, right? And we don't know really what the effects are of that on the big screen as opposed to the small screen, both A, because really we've only had like one example of it, I would say, with the Joker, and B, because of the fact that we just got done with the year of COVID, where we essentially couldn't go to the movies at all. So we really didn't get to experience that in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, we're getting back to that, and we're seeing a return to form as far as the movies that are going to be coming out, but we still have yet to see with that, as far as that goes.
Yeah, no, totally. We got Crazy Carl in the chat, a new face, man. He likes Rise of Skywalker better than Empire, unironically. But to get back to the sort of the sentiment of what we were just talking about, that's a critique I've been seeing a lot actually today of this specific episode and this series so far is, while the messaging is powerful and important, is it sort of getting in the way of the storytelling and sometimes taking up some of the space that the storytelling should occupy? And so it's interesting to see you guys take. So I'm actually I'm a little confused as to where both Yolo and Joe are coming from. So I was using that as a segue to sort of have you guys both clarify your arguments. I think a lot of time has come in between each of your statements. And so if you guys can condense that, I do think we're having an interesting discussion right now, but I kind of want to like lock that in and sort of solidify it a little further just to see where you guys fall in regards to that.
So the problem with Yolo and I is that we agree on so much shit, and we just approach it from different. We really do. Like he and I, we're like the ones that argue all the time online, but we agree with each other. It's just like how we're going about it. My whole thing with this is, and Yolo, disagree with me if you have to, like, or if you do, but I think we're going to be in the same. Maybe I don't know. Whatever. Maybe we're not in the same boat. My whole thing with this is. What you just said, Chris, is that there's people that are looking at this show and they're saying that the issues that they're approaching are getting in the way of the storytelling. And I think that is the quintessential issue because they're separating the issues from the storytelling. The issues are part of the storytelling. And we've seen that from the very beginning with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. They've woven in issues of race, issues of mental health, issues of whatever it may be. The mental health issues, I think, are taking a backseat to what we're seeing with, like, you know, when Bucky and Sam were arguing in the street and they pulled up in Baltimore and, you know, we're like, oh, what's going on here? And then Bucky ended up getting arrested, all that stuff. The issues of mental health are getting set aside a little bit. But today, even with like the TT comment and with some of the other stuff you see with like Sarah as Sam's sister, there's so much that they're addressing here. My problem is, going back to what I said earlier, you don't see these same social issues addressed deeply in the movies. It's kind of interesting, Dom, in the way that you were talking about some of the films that you were referencing with like Joker and stuff. Right. Joker's a DC movie.
Right.
DC, I don't.
Just has a precedent of, regardless of the quality, of being more interested in those types of stories than Marvel does, and I'll be the first person to admit that.
Well, I'll be the second, but I'm not going to dive into that right now. But my whole I love DC because they dive into issues head on. They deal with the stuff that is relevant today. I'm not saying that Marvel doesn't, but I think that Marvel, as a Disney company, sugarcoats shit so much. And I think that Disney Plus is a welcomed way that they're diving into more of those stories and really exploring the issues of today in Falcon and Winter Soldier, in WandaVision. Like WandaVision, there's mental issues going on there. That's a conversation about mental health. You have so much going on here in Falcon and Winter Soldier. Loki, I'm not sure what we're going to touch on with that because he's just like a psychopath. But I like that they're doing this. I just want them to do it on a more mainstream level. And that has always been what has held Marvel back, is that they do what they think they need to do in order to appeal to a wider audience.
Right.
That is the Disney motto.
The question is, though, is that exclusive to Disney? Because let's be honest.
Oh, no. It's totally not exclusive to Disney. But when you're talking about DC versus Marvel right. Owned by Disney, that's what's exclusive. Warner Brothers doesn't have a fucking plan. Let's be clear.
To say the least.
I love DC. They don't have a fucking plan. They don't know what they're doing. Warner Brothers is just like, yeah, do this, do that, try whatever. But
at least they try to, at least they like, because I feel like whenever Marvel inserts, because you're right, Joe, I think for the most part they've played it safe and they've been more cookie cutter and they always say that they're going to do this big statement and they never really, they never really do. So at least DC tries to shed light on some of like those issues. Granted, their movies are messy and sloppy. So I think, the films never really come across the way that they want. Just look at the Snyderverse. But
it's also a lot, Chris, of what people don't like about those movies is that they are that real. Right? Like you're not in that weird universe where like mental health and racism and all this shit doesn't exist. What we're starting to see with Marvel is they're getting into that. They're talking about the mental health issues. They're talking about racism. They're talking about, the classism and whatever. And they're struggling because people are not responding well to these series as well as they do to the movies. I think there's a correlation there.
So you think so? I guess your final argument before we turn it over to Yolo is you're saying because of the fact that WandaVision wasn't received too well and because of the fact that there seems to be some mixed reviews around the risks or I guess the new sort of grounds that, and maybe Disney Plus sees it as like taking the risk of doing these sort of new topics on their smaller platform before they get it to theaters. Because of the mixed reception, you're thinking it's never going to make its way to the screen. This is the testing ground. And so because it doesn't seem to be going over the way that like the Iron Man trilogy did, is that what you're trying to say?
Well, I don't think the Iron Man trilogy ever delved into anything that was socially
I meant like the reception as
relevant.
being
Iron
like
Man
so
3
positive and so
tried.
embraced that like allowed them to like, build more and more of the MCU off of in that direction.
No, I get that. I think my point, number one, Falcon and Winter Soldier was filmed before WandaVision. But number two, I do think that what we're seeing is them testing out the exploration of characters that weren't otherwise characters that don't have much meat to them in the way that the MCU created them. So they're trying to dive into what makes them tick. What are their issues? What are their challenges?
The side characters got the TV shows.
100%.
Right.
And in doing that, you have to address mental health issues, racism, classism, social differences, all that stuff. And that's what people don't like. We're seeing that. That's what people are saying about this show right now.
But that's the thing that's the thing I don't agree, because every time we say that's what people don't like, that's the 10 guys that live in a basement that have no jobs and are writing every day that are saying, because majority of people are liking it. Majority of people are liking it because
I think Dom is in a basement.
Yeah.
No, I'm actually in attic space, believe it or not.
yeah, he's more of an attic dweller.
But that's the thing. We need to stop like making assumptions on what social media says, because that's the people that have nothing to do. If we look at like IMDb's, if we look at all that and see the ratings on these shows are amazing. Like WandaVision, like for example, if we go to Rotten Tomatoes and stuff like that, people like. There's a bunch of people that are always going to complain, and are the same stupid people that are like sending death threats to the actors and stuff. Those are the stupid.
But YOLO, respectively, we are not the people that they're making films for, making shows for. But they're making them for the people that are not putting them up on Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, whatever else it may be.
Yeah, and like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, like the first episode had the highest like number of people viewing it that WandaVision. So that shows that more people went to see it. But the thing is, look, before we were talking about what Marvel is doing, and look, they are doing what every successful, and I'm not gonna take this as a dig. DC. Like you say, they dive in straight with their heads in. Yeah, and 90% of the time they smash their heads on the floor and they just fail. That's the thing. Like I compare Marvel to Spielberg. Okay,
I'll kill you.
No, but the thing is, I compare Marvel to I compare Marvel to Spielberg. If Spielberg wanted to do the Schindler List, he had to do Jaws, he had to do E.T., he had to do Jurassic Park, he had to do all those.
And he didn't even want to do Schindler's List is the most insane part.
Yeah, then he became a household name. His name took people to the cinema. The studio put all the money in the world at his feet because he did those, so he could do Schindler's List. And that's the thing. He does one for the studio, one for him. One for the studio, one. And this is the same. Marvel did that. They did everything the audience wanted to see. Okay, they did everything. Like they did like how you say the cuts. I don't know what you say, like the cookie.
Well, they did the grandiose build up, the big bad who controls the fate of the world. They did the comic book kid's dream with the whole Thanos arc on.
Exactly, and they knew they got everyone on their side. Now they can dig in a little deeper and talk about these issues. Because if they went straight in, let's say Iron Man 1, and we like going fully alcoholic, and we're seeing Tony Stark like being like fully on an alcoholic asshole, we wouldn't even have got the Marvel Universe. So that's the thing. I think they are now doing this because they know they can. And what we need to like, and that's what pisses me off, is like we never give praise to people. We always say to people, you're not doing enough. Okay, you're doing this, but you should have done this. You're doing this, you should have done that. And I think that's the problem.
Are you talking about people in Marvel? that we're not
No.
giving enough praise to, or
No. What I'm saying is when people like, for example, you are saying, and I'm not saying it's you specifically, but like,
ranted and raved
but
about Joker.
but they talking. Look, I completely agree with Joe there. Joker for me should have I don't know if he should won, but he should have been one of the favorites easily.
I mean,
but anyway, what I'm saying is Marvel now starts talking about racism, starts talking about police violence, it starts talking about stuff like that.
24 movies in.
And that's the attitude that pisses me off. It doesn't matter if it's 24 movies in. They could have stayed out of completely, keep doing what they were doing, and people would be watching. Like you said, oh, there's people complaining. They could have done this shows really safe.
But the problem,
Yolo,
the problem is you brought up something like Schindler's List, which is a realistic story, as well as something like Jaws, which not a realistic story in that sense, but I mean, shark attacks are real. I don't know. I haven't been.
Unfortunately,
but you're talking about those type of stories compared to Iron Man making a heart out of a machine, Thor coming from Greek neurology, talking about all that shit. And you're trying to say that that's the comparison.
But let me just
say, saw what Spielberg did.
No, the comparison. No, the comparison.
Guys, get ahead of yourselves. Chris, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say, because I honestly see great points on both sides, and to me, it speaks to a larger societal issue of the fact that it took 24 movies for people to finally, start allowing this type of conversation, which honestly should have been happening, as we all know, years and years and years ago. Into these. That's the unfortunate part to me.
And 21, I put a woman in the lead.
But look, one thing.
Yeah.
The thing is it Disney's fault or is it ours? Because we all complain. We all complain every time. We say, oh, there's no new movies. It's only superhero movies. There's no
Disney is reactive to what we want.
But the thing is not that. Yes, exactly. But it is a company. And we have to remember it's a company. If they go broke, they're not going to make any movies. None of all. Not even 24 movies
They're not going to go broke out of Brie Larson leading one movie.
This is
the
most insane argument I think I've ever seen, because I don't think I've ever seen two people argue about what seems like the exact same thing more than I've ever seen.
The thing is,
have you met us?
The nuance is so finite, and I see it on both sides. It's just, to me, the unfortunate thing is us as critics and I guess open-minded individuals. Clearly, we're not who YOLO's talking about, but it sucks that I think the majority of the people, I would honestly say, are who YOLO's talking about, and that's kind of scary and kind of unfortunate.
And that's what I wanted to get at as well. Before we move on to MVPs, I did want to cover MVPs a little bit before we resume this.
But does anyone have any closing thoughts though on that part? Because I don't want any stone to be left unturned here.
YOLO is the absolute worst. I heard that Portugal is looking like.
And I saved my worst argument against him. I was saving it.
Wasn't Portugal? Wasn't Portugal where Black Widow jumped off the mountain? It just did not look nice. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my god!
Beautiful place.
But what I was gonna say to kind of talk about the kind of Joe, it's interesting that you brought up that one point though, as far as kind of the people that YOLO was talking about. And I agree. Again, I'm not a fan of those people at all, and I hate the fact that it feels like most movies in general now seem to be made to cater to those types of people. But Joe, I did find it interesting that you brought up the idea that Marvel does not make movies for people like us. And by that I assume that you meant critical thinking, rational-minded people, of which there are fewer and fewer people, per day as each day goes by. But the interesting thing as far as that goes is that the idea of kind of people who are just watching this for, again, because they don't want really to have the deep political discussion. They'd rather just, theorize about stuff, The interesting thing about that is those types of people seem to be the people who I'm hearing the most from as far as the reactions for this things go.
Of course you are, because that's why they're making those movies. But I don't want to make a big deal about. I don't want to get into the weeds of this, but you're talking about we are three white straight men and one gay, but we are talking about who Marvel is making movies for, right? So you're talking about the mainstream. You're talking about who they're hoping to make the money from, and that is why we have not gotten a Marvel movie that was focused on a female character until Captain America or Captain Marvel. That was 21 or 22 was the movie. They fucking did Infinity War before they did Captain Marvel. Now we're finally getting one of the original Avengers in Black Widow coming in. The reason they're not doing that is because you saw this when those movies were coming out with Captain Marvel. The freaking Rotten Tomato scores skydive before the movie even premiered because it's those nerdy white straight men that don't believe that a female can carry a comic book character.
Oh, and that's the point, Joe. You just like defending my point. Like, that's exactly what I mean. If they did Captain Marvel 5 years before, there wouldn't be enough of the defenders of the MCU.
But I guess I want them to have a little more balls to step into what reality is today instead of what these straight white nerds want reality to be.
But this is the first show that's been like truly interesting MCU wise in a long time. That's really like, at least, I mean, look at the we're having like an actual intelligent conversation around Marvel for the first time in a long time. So sorry, Yolo, what were you saying?
No, my point is exactly like what I was saying. The point here is you have to make a decision. You can see 10 guys on the street and you can go head on with them and say, come on, fight me. And you're going to get your ass kicked. Or you can try and get one by one until you win. And this is what Marvel is doing. If they release Captain Marvel a lot of years before, look, but that's the reason for
that's all they're doing. They're not making a decision based on anything in reality.
Do you think Warner Brothers doesn't do it for the money? The thing is, they just
did. They shit on shit that was actually good to try to make money, and look what they're doing. They don't have any direction.
Exactly, but the thing is, in the end of the day, these are companies. The only way they can make money is by look at A24. We all like, look at A24. Look at those beautiful movies. They never fucking made money in one movie. If they don't change a bit or get someone to put money in, they're going to be bankrupt, and then there's no more movies.
But they're focused on the storytelling. Marvel and DC are not. It's on the money.
But the problem is that what I'm saying is A24 sooner or later will go broke unless they change something, and these guys will continue on making, and that's what I was saying about Spielberg. You could go to Spielberg and say, oh, look how many movies it took until he did Schindler's List. Or you can go, oh my God, you did Schindler's List and it's an amazing movie and he did a good job. That's the point. We are focusing on how long it took instead of saying, look what they are doing now. They are doing something now. But like, that's the thing. It's the cup. Like, the only difference with Joe and me is he always sees the cup empty, and I see the cup.
That's a very good way to put it. Well, listen, Spielberg also did Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls, and we saw Shia LaBeouf swinging with monkeys. So I don't know if that's where you want to rest your shit on.
Look, one for him, one for the studio.
And in that case, it was George Lucas that he was doing the favor for.
Fair point.
But the one thing that I will say is Spielberg did do Color Purple a full 8 years before Schindler's List. That's the one thing I will add. So MVPs going around, and then we'll continue this discussion in the continuation of the greater overall Marvel lore, because this is a great discussion, and I do want to keep having this, because this is the most fun that I've had on one of these shows in a while overall. But
put YOLO and I on a stream against you.
Oh, man, Chris, if you had known what you were in for tonight,
because we continue this shit after it. You don't understand this. We get off these streams.
I get it. But it's all good.
It's all good. We have good conversations.
My MVP of the night is John Walker, because to continue kind of the point that I was trying to make before is that he is trying so hard to live up to that mantra that it's slowly driving him insane. And as we saw at the end, right, the idea of kind of Erskine and what he saw in Steve, like, would he have seen it in John Walker? No, absolutely not. And the problem is that John Walker is the guy who would have kept trying and trying and trying to get Erskine's approval to the point where eventually John Walker is the guy who eventually becomes the Red Skull, you know? Or at least, you know, what Schmidt was, which is why Erskine was so turned off by him. And the fact that kind of Walker is being able to portray that step by step, that kind of descent into madness, and portray it so brilliantly, and continue like Wyatt Russell's kind of insane acting train that he's had over these last couple of years that he's been a celebrity. It's honestly kind of insane, to say the least. And it's still why I truly think that he is the best thing to have happened to Marvel in years. So that's my pick, John Walker. Chris, you go because you haven't.
Yeah,
talked
sorry,
in a
I just didn't know
while.
if one of the guests wanted to go. I'll chime in.
It's
What was the
Wyatt
question?
now.
So yeah,
MVP.
I think for me, my MVP is it's kind of like, I don't know, I was splitting hairs trying to figure out who I would exactly go with, but I think at the end of the day, it's gonna have to be Falcon, because I really like the way we're finally getting to see his character and who he is, and now we have 4 episodes, and just kind of like watching how he conducts himself, and that moment with him and what's the Flag Smasher girl's name?
Carly
Carly.
Morgenthau.
Carly, man, that was such a real moment. I really, because there's a lot of ways to do that and sort of have like the whole sort of like, good cop mentality of like, okay, I just need to get her in close enough to put the cuffs on. But he really played that, like genuinely empathized with her. And I thought it was pretty impressive from like an acting standpoint, that whole moment. And just like how he, I think, heightens John Walker when they're in the same scene, him being so of the straight and narrow. And, I think John Walker is clearly an amazing character, and I think he's a great actor, and he's phenomenal in this role. But I think everyone around him too, it's like just the meshing and the way they're all sort of congealing as a cast, it feels very real. And I think he's at the heart of that now, seeing 4 episodes. So yeah, for me, it's Falcons. But hey, man, they're all really killing it, to be honest with you, in this show as far as acting goes. But yeah, sure. Yolo, what about you? Who would your MVP of this week's episode be?
Yeah, I would agree completely with you, because I think John Walker is that easier MVP. He has the easier role to stand out. And I think the Falcon, what I like about it is he's kind of the only normal person there. He's kind of not one of us, but it's like there's all these super soldiers going around, especially now that John Walker also took the serum. And still in the middle of all that, he completely knows that he wouldn't take the serial life because of the wrong reasons. And I think in the end of like Endgame, when Steve gives him the shield, a lot of us thought, why are you giving it to him? Like, at least give it to Bucky, because like, what is he going to do with a shield? He's like, doesn't have any superpowers or anything. And now I think he's kind of earning the right to carry that shield, because he's showing that he is a good man, that he might not have the physical abilities of Steve, but he has like the mentality and he has the good heart. And I think he's playing really, really well. And like, I think Anthony is like doing a really, really good job with it, because he's going really subtle with it. And it's like the conversations, for example, that he had with Aaron, like on that part, I thought it was really well done. And he's showing more and more of his character, is becoming more interesting. So I would say that Falcon for me is the most surprising, because knowing the comic books, I kind of expected everything that like John Walker character is going through. So I was expecting it to happen, and not that surprised. He's just doing a really good job with it. But the Falcon was something that I didn't really know if I would be interested in his character.
Joe, your MVP.
So pains me to say this, I agree with Yolo. No, I love Sam. I think Sam did a great job in this episode. But I think that he would not have done such a great job if Carly was not as his opposite there. The focus on them just like having the conversations that they did, like when he was above the funeral and then he came down and had the conversation, that was such a great moment. I don't know why I love that more than I loved a lot of other things in this series, but it just grounded what the actual reality of these characters was. And Carly, for her, I mean, we know her from Star Wars, right? From Solo. She was in Solo, if you remember.
Oh yeah, that's why I recognize her.
Yep. But I think she's really good for this character, because she does not have vicious she has vicious tendencies, not vicious intents. That's not what she wants to do. And I think Sam gets that. So that conversation between them was just very basic. It was basic, but it was rewarding in the sense that it boiled this whole like wild series where we're expecting so much action, the super soldiers, Zemo, and whatever may come in the future. It boiled it down to a human level. And I really enjoyed that. I was honestly very surprised. So Sam is definitely my MVP. Carly, I think, is up there too.
Yeah, I was wondering why
Luke,
you looked at it, Well,
I wanted to say that Luke. I thought it was interesting, because Luke always has some good takes, and he's always here loyally in the chat. He's throwing it to Zemo. Yeah, Zemo's dope, man. I would love to see more of him too. He certainly is very hard to take your eyes off of when he's on the screen. That's
Chris,
for
can
sure.
I branch off of that though? Are we going to talk about things we don't like?
Well, I was just gonna say real quick. Did you guys see the one that they did the 1 hour Zemo cut of just him like dancing just nonstop?
I kind of love that. It's so
That was
stupid,
great.
but I love it.
That was great. I love that. And well, I just wanted to say one thing before you said your point, Joe, which that to me, like, there was a moment where it showed Sam fighting with John. And just like the distinction of like, whenever Sam fought with Cap, obviously there was like a rhythm and a grace there, right? Because of how well they went together. And when he's fighting with John, and he's kind of like looking back and seeing how brutal John is as a fighter, and kind of like how that distracts him and like kind of how it throws off their game, kind of like just the dissonance between them. I thought it was just such a great use of visuals as far as like the differences between, to further the differences between the type of Captain America John is versus
100%.
Steve. But
can I just tell you though, when the Wakandans were fighting John, or I'm sorry, Walker, and when that was all happening, and Bucky and Sam goes, "We should do something," and Bucky goes, "Looking strong, John." I was like, I died.
I
died. Are we talking about negatives? Can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that before we hit star ratings.
I love the involvement of the Wakandans. I really do. It feels like an afterthought to me.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm struggling with, because I really do. I love that Io, I love that she is getting more development than she ever got in the previous movies, especially Black Panther. Because
she was a punchline in Civil War.
She was a punchline, but she was also the sidekick to Lupita Nyong'o, right? Like, you're not. Of course, she's not going to get there.
But yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Sorry, but that's my whole thing. I'm like, I like it. I like the involvement. It connects with T'Chaka getting killed and all that stuff. Where's it going? How are we going to bring this all together? Because it just feels like fan service in that way, that we're bringing in someone else from another film to try to, I don't know, enhance the story. I like it. Don't get me wrong. I really like it. Because that action today in this episode was incredible, especially when they threw the spear through the shield.
When it's like reminded you,
and when she like kicked it up, and I was like,
too.
Exactly. I was like, yeah. Right. And when they pulled the arm off of Winter Soldier, I was like, yes.
That was cool. That was cool. If I could offer like one brief bit of respect, because for the most part, I do agree with you as far as like when she showed up at the end of the last episode, I'm like, oh, cool. But then afterwards, I was like, oh, what? Like, why are we doing this? You know, like I understand why, as far as the whole Bucky and the connection to Civil War and everything, and just adding more context to Bucky's time in Wakanda, especially since so much of it, like, it seems like a lot of the cool stuff in the MCU happened off screen, but. The one thing that I'll say is I think that it was personally added in order to show more so just how out of his element John is, because John, again, goes up to them and just tries to interact with them, and it's like, bro, this is the Dora Milaje, like, if they only show up when they have a very specific reason for being there, so, like, if anything, I feel like both to add further context to Bucky and in order to, again, to show just how out of his element John is, and in order to, like, kind of further him towards, like, kind of this, well, we'll say, like, kind of this negative train, we'll say, that we don't know where it's going.
Tom, I actually agree with that 100%. I like that thought that it, like, this episode, totally, it shows, it creates a power difference, right?
Right.
Last episode, though, when she showed up at the end, I was like,
that was an Easter egg.
Where the fuck are we going?
And it's funny because it kind of almost folded into, I feel like, a lot of everyone's problems with last episode, where last episode felt largely like a setup, showing off a cool new location, rather than like kind of a good installment in the overall story.
So that's funny to me that you guys think that, because while I had a lot of issues with last week's episode, I actually thought that was one of the things that was done well, because it was sort of the hook.
Agree.
Yeah, it was like the hook sort of getting us into now the back half of the series. Clearly, we had the same writer write Act 2, which is, of course, these two episodes, 3 and 4. And I thought it was really well introduced in an episode that I actually thought I'm starting to see the payoff this week. Okay, maybe we needed some of that downtime and some of the more exposition-heavy moments. And so really my only problem with it is it didn't live up to the expectations because of exactly what Dom just said. This is my biggest probably issue with the MCU as a whole. Stop making things happen off screen. I'm trying to watch a movie or a TV show. I want to see it on screen. It's frustrating. It really is, because I mean, it's like, I get it, but like there should have been some scenes with, the Wakandans gearing up. Zemo's out, a beeper goes off and they see him. Like, I shouldn't have to brainstorm this on a live stream. Like, we should have some like other reasons aside from like, hey, it's just, he's finally broken out and this is sort of Bucky's loose backstory. Like, it just, to me, it feels like an afterthought, but not for the same reason maybe that you felt it did, Joe. For me, it's just the frustrating fact of the MCU sometimes always gets a little too in over their head, and I'm not a fan of like this whole, hey, something happened in between here and there, and we're going to get like caught up in the first 15 minutes of the movie, because it's been a year and a half since the last Marvel film, and here we go, we're back in it. I've never been a fan of that. Obviously, I'm in the minority on that.
Chris,
But that's always been my biggest flaw with the MCU.
But correct me if I'm wrong. You're talking about the movies, right? What we're seeing now is the series that are picking that back up, and I think that's why they're doing these series, is to be able to fill in those holes and shit like that.
But Joe, if that's the case, then why are we still getting these moments?
Maybe it's old habits. I don't know.
Because it's money. We're subscribing. We're watching. We're talking about them on a stream at 9:18 in the evening Eastern.
Well, our time.
On a Friday.
Later for YOLO.
YOLO's like in I don't know hell right now.
What time it is over there?
Look, in the end of the day, it's always the same thing I was saying before. We are never happy. None of us are never happy, because when they show too much, it's like, oh, look at all the exposition they're making. Why are they explaining all that? We're not retarded. We got that with King Kong. Everyone was like, why is he always talking about this? We could figure it out. Now we're saying, oh, why didn't we thought that?
The idiots that were trying to make sense out of King Kong, out of Kong, Godzilla versus Kong, need to like go fly.
Need to understand that movie actually fixed a lot of the problems with the last movie.
That's the thing.
Like, bruh, everybody hated the last movie because there was
oh my god, the
CGI
CGI didn't make sense.
And now this movie fixes it, and there's humans talking. It's like, bruh.
Sorry, y'all. I cut you off.
No, but that's the thing. Look, not going on you, Chris, but I don't need to see the goddamn Black Panthers trying to get their passports and the visa to go to America and stuff.
Yeah, they wouldn't get it right now. They wouldn't get it right now.
Look, I thought it was completely logic. Like Zemo got out of jail. Who's the first people that want to get him? Is like the people that he killed the king. It was completely logic to me that he was there. I didn't need to see like all the setup and all this and all that. And again, we are always like going, oh, where is this going? This is going in 2 more episodes. Just fucking wait. Don't like start saying, whoa, where's this going? Because like we always get ahead of our times, complaining about stuff. Like we're complaining about Mephisto, and Mephisto wasn't even there in the WandaVision. Like
speaking of, did you see that Bucky took a shit in this episode, and it made the arc of the M? Yeah. So it's totally Mephisto is coming.
But look, in the end of the day,
I mean that's probably a fan theory with a couple hundred views out there on YouTube somewhere.
Somebody just turned that into a fan theory overall. But guys, this is
no. Hang on, though. I just want to say one more thing about because YOLO, you're totally right, and that's why I kind of like did that little preface to how I was going to react throughout the course of this episode, because that being some of my issues, I was inclined to actually bring it up this time, because whereas I felt the same problems with WandaVision, it didn't get paid off, although this show seems to be way more airtight. It seems to be more tightly woven. So I'm not as worried about it. It's just that I don't know. It's just, I don't want to hear about something awesome that happened off screen. I kind of just want to see it, and I feel like the MCU's done that a few times. But I think you're totally right, YOLO. Like for sure, it's a very minor nitpick of mine, but it's still I felt had to bring it up just to be true to myself as a critic. But you're right, and they might pay it off. They honestly might. And hey, we'll go back and we have this time capsule moment where I can just be like, you probably shouldn't have said this now.
My boy Dustin, Mr. G Movie Reviews, did bring up a very valid point, which is that the Dora Milaje did allow Zemo to escape, which was, I will admit, that was a very, very obvious plot point. It's like, that was the one moment in this episode where I'm like, okay, this plot point is totally just here so that Zemo can escape.
They're there to get him, and he escapes.
And he quite literally escapes. So, quite literally, 100%. So, closing thoughts on the episode overall, I'll say that this is, I think this might be my favorite episode yet, honestly. I really do. Again, we got 2 more episodes to go. We got to wait, obviously, until the end of the story to see how this wraps up. But overall, I'm fully in on the ride. I'm enjoying where this is going. I've enjoyed everything that this is talked about as far as, kind of getting into the deep areas, we'll say, that Marvel has kind of not really done so before in the movies. I enjoyed this a hell of a lot. I'm giving this 4.5 out of 5 stars. Chris, what is your overall rating and final thoughts?
Yeah, for sure, man. I think that's a super fair rating. I really enjoyed my time with this episode too. I'm actually looking forward to this show week to week. Whereas after about episode 4 or 5 this time, let's say early February with WandaVision, I wasn't so much looking forward to it. Obviously, I was looking forward to the stream, but not so much to actually watching it. And I think it just sort of shows like this is sort of my wheelhouse. This is my type of storytelling, my type of action storytelling. I really enjoy a lot of what they're doing here. I do hope, though, that it does sort of, highlight and sort of pay off on my suspicion that this is more tightly woven than we think, and that we are building to something as awesome as what we're sort of seeing sort of trickle in episode to episode. So with optimism, my score will be a 4 out of 5 because I'm really hoping that this series ends the way it's going, which I'd say is riding a very big high. So with that being said, YOLO, man, what's your final thoughts and star rating?
In terms of the show, I'll probably go 4 out of 5. But this episode for me was the best one, so I would give it a 4.5. I think they needed the time to set it up. They did it, and now they went a little bit more into the message, the issues, and just that ending with the shield with the blood. I just think it's, if you want to highlight some of the best frames of the MCU, that's up there. So I would give it a 4.5 to this episode.
Absolutely. Joe, your thoughts?
So I actually absolutely agree with YOLO. Please don't screenshot that or record that. No, I think I
it's going to be my ringtone. I'm going to put it as my ringtone.
I agree.
For that. You should have known better.
No, I said this in the review I put up today. I do think this is the best episode that they've had. It totally is the catalyst to what we're going to see in the last two. There's a lot that was at work there. Chris, we have not touched on something that you and I talked about offline. There is something that Hoskins, Battlestar.
You mean Chef from the Total Drama Show?
Yeah, we have our little segment though, like the effects of this show on the greater MCU. So once you give your star rating, we'll jump right into that real quick, Joe.
So my star rating on the show right now is a 3 out of 5 because I'm not totally sold on it. I want to see where it goes. This episode though is totally a 4 out of 5 or 4.5 out of 5. I love this episode. I thought it was very much a catalyst to what we're going to see in the future.
Cool. Yeah, so I guess we could just quickly talk about the future.
Yeah, I didn't think we were going to have that much to talk about, but yeah, Joe, go. Your point on how this affects the greater overall MCU and comic book verse.
Okay, so here's my thing. If you did not notice this, I freaked out when I saw this earlier. Can we zoom into this? Are we not able to do that?
No, I was getting on that right as we speak.
So look, this is Hoskins. This is Lamar Hoskins, Battleship. Look at the goddamn, look at the eye. He was in his binds or whatever he cut out of them, was getting up. This is right before he ran into the fight with the rest of the flag fighters or whatever, and everyone else, and got thrown against that pole. Look at his eye. It is white with an orange spot in there. This caught me because I do not think that he's dead. I think there's something else going on with him. I do think that he was stabbed with something.
It's Mephisto again.
I thought we were done. I thought we were done with the theory.
It's Mephisto again.
But the thing with Mephisto is we never had any evidence of anything weird.
No, but here's the thing, Joe. I never thought he was dead because of the fact that they didn't show a confirmed on-screen kill, and this is the MCU. And what do we know about the MCU? It's very easy to come back to life.
But Chris, what do you say about this eye?
I think there's something going on there. I mean, I don't necessarily think he got super soldier serum in him or anything like that, but I do think that there is something sort of up with it. But I didn't notice this, but what I just thought to myself was, man, okay, this guy's going to come back in some way, shape, or form. It's too good to be true that he just got taken out that quickly like that. I didn't believe it. It didn't feel believable to me. And then you brought this to my attention, and I want to let you take it away because you got the theories in your brain. So,
yeah, well, which are never good theories. But the one thing I do want to bring up with this is that I do like the idea of the fact that you see what Walker is doing after he saw the death of Hoskins. He's freaking out. He's going crazy. He killed, Carly's friend. We never got a name for him. Killed Carly's friend, all that stuff. But how great would this setup be if in the next episode or two we see Hoskins come back confronting Walker, and it's the antithesis of what Walker was, right? They have this moment or this issue with this is not who you're supposed to be. This is totally a Marvel move to make, and again, maybe this is just like random lighting that cut this clip in a weird way, but I do think that we're going to see him back because he has too much to offer.
Look,
And
I just love
exactly.
the other thing real quick is you're going to cut off this like powerhouse black superhero this quickly in this show.
Who has a big lore in Marvel history in the
Correct.
comics and stuff.
In multiple
So,
ways.
It didn't feel like a throwaway. It never did. But then you caught this, and I don't know if it's like something with Hydra or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I guess Hydra's back in play because
we
of,
know the Thunderbolts are coming at some point between both this and Black Widow. We know the Thunderbolts are coming, and I assumed that with where it seems like they're taking the John Walker character, that he would be recruit number 1, obviously. So.
What I would recommend is going back. This is sorry, I know the actual timestamp. This is 43 minutes, 30 seconds. Go back like 4 or 5 seconds. Watch the development of this. He blinks. He has a normal eye. It comes up. It's this. There's something going on there. I don't think that is nuanced.
Yeah, no, it's a good attention to detail, if anything, man. I mean, I didn't catch that. That's for sure.
To say the least. No, good catch overall. But yeah, so with that being said, people, that was our recap and really kind of, I feel like more so like analysis of the examining kind of overall studio-ism of Falcon and Winter Soldier.
No,
what we do. It's what we do.
But every time, it was what we needed. Like every time we have these two on, you know that you're going to have a great stream. So YOLO Joe, thank you guys for coming on once again and making this stream as great as it was overall. We're going to start with YOLO. Where can the good people find you on the social medias?
Yeah, mainly on Instagram, Unyolo Movies blog. You can find us there. It's our page with my daughter, and we do reviews. We do everything there. Also Letterboxd, and that's pretty much it.
Joe, where can the good people find you?
Oh my God, look at the list now.
Yeah, right?
You can find me on YOLO's blog. He likes to feature me every once in a while. No, gottomovies.com, gottomovies on Instagram. You can find every connection there. Very happy to be on here. Love being with you guys. Always a good conversation. Yeah, I do want to spotlight. YOLO and I have been on a lot of streams recently, and we argue all the fucking time. But
about
the best
same thing. Like,
but
the same point.
But that's the best part because we have so much fun doing it. Like we see eye to eye on so much, and then afterwards we're like, "What do you think about this? Do you want to chat a little bit more? Do you want to whatever?" And I think that's what makes this community so great is that we can just have these conversations. And Dom, you're on the outset because you annoy us. But Chris, like Dom, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding.
But this is why Joe liked the talk with Falcon and Carly, because that's like us. We kind of agree, just not on the way to get there.
Just not on certain.
Yeah, like YOLO, I'll probably blow you up in the next few days. It's fine.
Chris, amazing,
where can the good people find you outside of Talking TV?
Yeah, you guys can find me at Christian Evanko anywhere that matters, all those important social medias. I make music. I'm working on an album. I also have some music that I put out in the past. You can find on all of the links in my various bios, as well as my second podcast, Talking with Andrew and Chris, a show about life, music, and everything in between. We had some new faces in the chat tonight, like Crazy Carl, of course, Mr. G coming back, and Luke. Guys, we really appreciate you always supporting us and spending some of your time with us here on a Friday night, man. There's a lot of other places you could have been. You chose to be here. Thank you so much. Dom, where can they find you and follow you outside of this wonderful world of insanity we've created?
Because this is becoming like a staple. I'm like reading like my latest like sarcastic like things that I post on Facebook occasionally, and I if I'm not mistaken, I think that like the kind of the one sentence review that I wrote for this episode after I put it up is "shit just got real" was the most recent thing that I posted in order to describe this episode on my Facebook and Instagram, which you can follow me at Movie Nerd Reviews, but you can really find me in this spot where I devote my lifeblood to. That is, of course, at Talkin' TV Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, if you follow both of those in order to keep track of what we're doing, when we're getting you guys content. We implemented a little bit of a new schedule. We are now giving you guys content 5 days a week, sometimes even 6, depending on how we're feeling. We've got so much coming down the pipeline. Next month, we are getting into a recap show that I've been wanting to do for a while. That's right, I'm officially announcing it. I don't care. Talkin' Thrones, the official Game of Thrones recap show. That's right, people. Myself and Professor Pat sitting down week by week, doing episode by episode, breaking down arguably the biggest show of the last decade, the epicenter of television monoculture that kind of just went away after that god-awful last season. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be breaking it down episode by episode. We're going to be figuring out what went wrong overall with the show, and that's going to be airing on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, starting on May 2nd. You guys are
Hey,
not gonna
Dom,
wanna
what
miss
else
that.
are you going to be recapping?
As of right now, just that. But I did want to give a shout-out overall. That was my little dig at you. I haven't done that in a while. I will also be recapping Jupiter's Legacy as well for GuyAtTheMovies.com starting in the next couple of weeks once that goes up, because that trailer looks friggin' amazing, and I can't wait to see basically how I am assuming that's going to be like kind of Netflix's big budget version of The Boys.
Yeah, I changed my mind.
I was waiting for something like that, but yeah. And of course, again, subscribe to the Chalkin' TV channel. Again, we put our lifeblood into this stuff in order to give you guys this content, because we love you guys, because we love having you here every night. We love interacting with the chat. We love the community that we form in this. It is like the best thing to have come out of the hellish year that was 2020. Was all of the community that we formed, pun intended, the two compatriots that we have here, obviously, and all of the great new people that we continue to meet every time we go live over. Also, thank you guys once again. Click the subscribe button, click the like button, click the bell next to the subscribe button so you get notified every time we put up new content. Leave a comment in the comments section below. Overall, we will be back next week for episode 5 of Falcon and Winter Soldier, along with so much more. You guys are not going to want to miss what's coming next. So, from myself, from Joe, from Yolo, from Chris,
From Beetlejuice.
12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.